It is Wednesday, February 7th, 2018. It is 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so you know what time it is. It's time for a little bit of coin metal. And yes, as usual, it was a terribly productive Get Your Ass Kicked at Jiu-Jitsu Wednesday. We did a little bit of side control coverage today, and a little bit of shifting from that to Neon Belly. Some basic stuff, little windshield wiper from one side to the other, and then resecuring the side mount thereafter. And we did a little bit of tweaking with that today, and I feel like it's something I really need to work on a lot more. That and my shots. I had the hardest time coming in on a shot for some reason. I don't know if it's my short legs or what, but it just doesn't work for me. I gotta work on my technique a little bit. You know, it's one of those positions that it's really kind of unusual because you put your knee like way forward and then you like lean way out over your ankle with your knee, and that's kind of a unnatural motion for me. And my calves are really tight, and so my Achilles tendon isn't terribly limber, and so coming down into that position is really tough for me. But I will be working on it because I feel like with my hips and legs, I should be just launching people on a double leg, you know, and that's what I want to do. If I'm on a mat with somebody, I want to take the ground right out from under their feet one way or another. And I think that a good double leg takedown, having a good sweep game, that'd be the best way to go about it. But I'm learning. I'm still having a lot of trouble with being too tense. I tend to be really hyper vigilant on my defense, and I think it's causing me to miss a lot of opportunities that I would otherwise be getting. And I had an opportunity to train with a very, very skilled young man today, and I could feel it in the way he was moving. He's like I want to say a half step, maybe 3/4 of a step beyond where I am as far as my game is concerned, and so I got to try that much harder to catch up. Definitely need to be doing some more open mat time, but between my regular schedule and the show, it's kind of difficult to squeeze more in, honestly. Because while I'm not actually doing the show, I'm usually studying up because I'm trying to keep y'all relevant and current. So as far as what we're going to talk about today, we did kind of touch on the SEC and the CFTC kind of getting together and having a little get together about cryptocurrencies on Monday, but we didn't get too far into that, and so I do have the PDF for both Mr. Giancarlo and the other gentleman that spoke, Mr. Clayton, and so I'm kind of debating as to which one I'm going to go with, because both of them I'm pretty sure are very well cited, so we may be getting into that and maybe even a white paper today. But as far as the markets go, it was kind of a tough day out there. It was a nice recovery for Bitcoin. We got up there into the 8,000 mark, and that certainly, I'm sure, helped a lot of people's opinion about Bitcoin, especially after the last couple days and the rout that we've been experiencing there. So I don't expect that it's over, but it's certainly been a nice reprieve today. I don't know. I've kind of been expecting this for a while now, really, that we would be seeing a correction with regard to Bitcoin Classic. Not Bitcoin Classic, Bitcoin Cash, and Ethereum, Litecoin. Those, I've been anticipating a correction for quite a while now. Honestly, I don't think anything goes from 1,000 to 20,000 in less than a month and doesn't come back down a little bit. It just doesn't happen, you know. Although I found it kind of interesting, Peter Schiff's take on it, that the descent is actually taking longer than the ascent, and I don't know that I could really quantify that with any specific attribution, but I do think that some of us that have been in here a little while longer are we're a little less reactive with regard to these markets than a lot of other people. I mean, we have our slew of noobs, and if you are a noob, don't take it as an insult, because honestly, we all really are noobs. There are no professionals in this space. There are people that can tell you they're professionals. They are not. We have not created the professionals yet. They'll need at least another decade dealing with these markets before I would accept the opinion of anybody claiming to be an expert in this space. They'll need another decade under their belt. That's all there is to it, because this is by far the most exciting market I've ever been involved in, and I anticipate that it will continue to get more so, especially as more and more people get on. And we are seeing a lot of migration with regard to the big institutional players with regard to getting into Bitcoin. You know, they were real tentative with all that DLT and blockchain this, blockchain that bullshit, and they're still trying that kind of stuff. But it does seem like that's slowing down as the reality of the situation is kind of sinking in a little bit, that these aren't going anywhere. We're not going to just be disappearing with people's money and all that business. Or at least not the vast majority of us. And it is with that, I'd like to go ahead and kick down into our first dance of the evening. And you know, only recently I've started buying more helmet. And I don't know why that is. I never really got into them other than Meantime. I don't know. I think that most of Meantime kind of put me off to them. That there was only like one or two songs that I felt were like really, really, really good out of all of them. But they spoke to me in a way that let me know there was more to the band. I was just probably getting an off release. And the more I listen to the music, the more it seems that is the case. And so it's with that, we're going to go ahead and kick it down. First Dance, Life or Death, here on Coin Metal. And that was Tool with Vicarious. I swear, one of these days I'm going to get it to where I can leave all of the music on. And actually, I'm going to have to fix it to where I get a straight recording of the feed. Because it's like it's from the same program, but for whatever reason, my recording program just does not like the feed not coming from the microphone. And because the feed isn't coming from the microphone, it doesn't bother to record it. I don't get it. Anywho, I got this article here. It's on Bitcoin Magazine. And this is what we're going to preface our coverage for today. I don't know that we're actually going to get into that white paper. I may be having somebody on here next week. He's a developer for a project. I'm not going to go too deep into it because I'm not entirely certain it's going to happen, but there has been tentative talks. And so we'll go from there. But I will be sure to give you guys fair notification prior to any guests that I do have on this show. They are so rare. And it's not like I don't ask people. You know, I mean, I ask people all the time, but a lot of the people that I ask are a little bit over, they think they're over my head. But, you know, as Mr. McAfee proved we can have an entertaining 1.5-hour conversation on this show. Anyway, I got this article here on Bitcoin Magazine. SEC and CFTC give testimonies at Senate hearing on virtual currencies. Now, I would like to preface this article by saying, out of everybody, I think the SEC and the CFTC have been they've probably been the most clear with regard to the understandings of this technology and how this stuff operates. I don't know that they're so clear on it that they realize how little actual enforcement activity they have here yet. But, the IRS honestly has the most to worry about. But I don't think that I don't think they're going to be able to do anything to really help themselves there. Anyway, here we go. Today, February 6th, so that was yesterday, 2018, the prospects for coherent U.S. regulation on cryptocurrencies became a little more clear, as were the impasses that were frustrating progress on the issue. Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs, the committee, heard joint testimony from the heads of both the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, and the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, CFTC. While both the SEC Chairman, Jay Clayton, and CFTC Chairman, J. Christopher Giancarlo, provided written testimonies on February 5, 2018, the statements from the Chairman, as well as the answers later garnered from Senate questioning, gave some clarity as to the direction U.S. regulation of virtual currencies is headed. Below is a general overview. And you know what? Did they even give us an author's name on this? Who wrote this fucking thing? I guess it was just Bitcoin.com. Although it might have been sourced from another article. No indication of that on here. Anyway, continuing. Jay Clayton loves blockchains, lukewarm on cryptos, not a fan of ICOs. Too fucking bad. In his opening testimony, the SEC chairman called the topic of regulating cryptocurrencies, ICOs, and relating trading activities important, stating that, quote, these markets are local, national, and international, global. From a market regulatory perspective, he stated, for ease of analysis, I break this space into 3 categories. First, a promising new technology referred to as distributed ledger technology or blockchain. The second and third categories are cryptocurrencies and ICOs. And, this guy's just making my mind up on whose information I'm going to be reading. I'm not going to be reading yours, Mr. Clayton, because you seem to have a conceptual difficulty here. You don't get fucking blockchains without cryptocurrencies. Period. No reward, no mining. No mining, no blockchain. If it's not mined, it's not a blockchain. It's a fucking database. Just because it's distributed doesn't make it not a fucking database. Continuing on. While the chairman lauded and even asked for blockchain technology startups to alleviate inefficiencies in market regulatory frameworks, he was less enthusiastic about both cryptocurrencies and ICOs, stating they are, quote, subsets of the products seeking to take advantage of the commercial opportunities presented by blockchain. Dude, somebody needs to slap the fuck out of this guy, seriously. Cryptocurrencies, according to Clayton, are, quote, promoted to be replacement for dollars, while ICOs, in his views, are, quote, like a stock offering. You know what? It's so great that Mr. Clayton isn't the one that actually gets to define these things for the rest of the planet. it's unfortunate that somebody's actually going to write a law based on his ideas, or at least his input. Clayton went on to state that while, quote, those who promote these so-called virtual currencies assert that they will make it easier and cheaper to buy and sell goods, particularly across borders. That's exactly what they do too. And that, quote, transaction fees and costs will be eliminated or reduced. To date, these assertions have proved elusive in many areas. Dude, only in your eyes. Talk to the Venezuelans. Talk to them about how it works. And they'll tell you straight up, Bitcoin is kicking their fucking local currency's ass. Even at a $40 fucking transaction fee. While some could argue that the chairman's opening commentary on cryptocurrencies was less than favorable, as in less than intelligent, that impression was far overshadowed by his stance on ICOs. Per Clayton, quote, from what I have seen, initial coin offerings are securities offerings. They are interesting companies, and much like stocks and bonds, under a new label. He didn't stop there. However, stating, quote, you can call it a coin, but if it functions as a security, it is a security. Another cause of concern for Clayton and on the ICO front, quote, an ICO may have nothing to do with distributed ledger technology beyond the coin itself. Oh my God. Slapped with a dead fish, please. Somebody. The two problems, quote, worth particular attention, however, were the lack of regulatory oversight on the markets and, quote, many ICOs are being conducted illegally by not following securities laws. Clayton wrapped up his opening volley at ICOs by warning that the ICO market, that those who engage in semantic gymnastics or elaborate structuring exercises in an effort to avoid having a coin be a security are squarely within the crosshairs of our enforcement division. Whole lot of fucking good that's going to do you, dude. They'll just set up shop in Malaysia. You won't know about it until it's way too fucking late. Chairman Giancarlo's opening remarks add more hopeful balance. I got to say, the CFTC, their primer on cryptocurrencies and ICOs, top notch and well worth the read. If you don't want to read it, I've actually read it and I've posted it on my YouTube channel. It's my primer on the CFTC's primer on cryptocurrencies. Tasty stuff. Continuing on. The CFTC chairman began his opening remarks by revealing a story about how his own children's interest in investing bloomed only last year with the rise of Bitcoin. Giancarlo remarked, quote, it strikes me that we owe it to this generation to respect their enthusiasm about virtual currencies with a thoughtful and balanced response, not a dismissive one. He did urge, however, that regulators, quote, must crack down hard on those who try to abuse the younger generation's enthusiasm with fraud and manipulation. Chairman Giancarlo's remarks went on to elucidate the CFTC's wish for regulators to thoroughly educate themselves and the public in order to create good policy choices and sound regulatory frameworks to protect consumers. Giancarlo followed up his prudent remarks by saying, quote, I suggest the right regulatory response to virtual currencies has at least several elements, specifying further that he stated that we must first, quote, learn everything we can. He then suggested that perspective with regard to the market cap of virtual currencies is key, stating that the, quote, total value of all virtual currency in the world is about $313 billion. In comparison, global money supply is around 7.6 trillion, while the value of all the gold in the world is around 8 trillion. the next task, according to Giancarlo, is to educate consumers. According to him, quote, "We've never conducted this much outreach for any other financial product." You haven't called me yet, dude. Another element, according to the chair, is regulatory coordination because, quote, "No one agency has direct authority over virtual currencies." And to that point, dude, no one direct authority or subsidiary authority in the world has any authority over cryptocurrencies or virtual currencies, as you put it. He was careful to point out the need for finding a balance between exercising legal authority over virtual currency derivatives while clarifying the CFTC's statutory limitations. Those limitations, as Giancarlo made abundantly clear, include the CFTC's lack of authority over regulating the spot markets for cryptocurrencies. He did, however, say that the CFTC has enforcement authority in the spot markets through their authority over cryptocurrency derivative markets, and you don't have any authority there either, dude. Sorry. Patchwork regulation isn't enough. Senator Mike Crapo, the head of the Senate committee, asked both regulators, quote, "Both of you said you don't have complete jurisdiction, but do you have sufficient jurisdiction? Should Congress address by law the issue of regulating virtual currencies?" SEC Chairman Clayton posited that all federal banking regulators should come together and have a coordinated plan for dealing with a virtual currency trading market, though he noted that they may at some point in the future find they need additional legislative authority. The CFTC Chair Giancarlo concurred, but directed the committee to look at, quote, "gaps in the legislation that could be presented." According to Giancarlo, there is patchwork coverage, but it's not enough to handle a regulatory framework that could be covered by a coordinated effort. ICOs that have raised funds from U.S. investors violated U.S. securities laws. According to who? The issue of ICOs and their legality was an oft-revisited point during the Q&A portion of the hearing. The minority leader on the committee, Senator Sherrod Brown, asked Clayton how much of the $4 billion in capital raised last year through ICOs was raised in the United States. The chair couldn't give any clarity, but suggested the number was probably enough that regulators should be talking about the issue. Senator Elizabeth Warren also had her say on the issue, stating, quote, "Some ICOs raise money for legitimate companies, but others, we know, are just Ponzi schemes. You don't know shit." Senator Warren then referenced Facebook's recent ban on cryptocurrency and ICO ads and asked SEC Chairman Clayton a series of questions, quote, "around how to make ICOs safer." Hey, hon, let's make a nuclear bomb safer. Give me a fucking break. The senator asked, in 2017... Oh, wait. Come on. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, sorry. Senator Warren, questions around how to make ICOs safer. The senator asked, in 2017, companies raised more than $4 billion in ICOs. How many of those companies registered with the SEC? Clayton told Senator Warren that not one had registered. Now let me ask you something else, Mrs. Warren. How many of those were based in the United States? And I'll tell you, it wasn't that many by comparison to how many actually bloomed in 2017. So your question was a bunch of bullshit, because you're asking for regulatory authority over ICOs that didn't even occur in the United States. And if they did have investors from within the United States, those motherfuckers were crafty enough to figure out a way to do it. And there's no way in hell you're going to undo that. If they have access to it now, they're going to continue having access to it later. That cat's out of the bag, hun. You just got to get over yourself. I swear, these people, they think they can regulate your fucking your baseball card collection, or your fine wine collection, or your vehicles, or your firearm collection. And maybe in some aspects they can, but you and I know there's collectors out there that have tons of assets in these forms that nobody at the SEC knows about. No one at the CFTC knows about. No one at the IRS knows about. Nobody knows about it but them and the person that they purchased it off of. And you know what? That's exactly how it should be. You do not need that much control over my assets. Continuing on. Let's see here. Where are we? Pressing further, the senator asked the chairman how many companies with upcoming ICOs had registered with the SEC, to which Clayton gave the same answer, unfazed. Senator Warren asked Clayton for a comment on why no one registered an ICO with the SEC. The chairman's response was a vague admonishment of the, quote, gatekeepers the SEC rely on to assist them in ensuring securities laws are followed, saying, quote, they have not done their jobs. Dude, you got 14-year-olds crafting fucking ICOs, and you're telling me there's some sort of fucking gatekeeper that's supposed to be, quote, doing their fucking job to help the SEC regulate? Fuck off. Elaborating further, he stated, quote, what ICOs do is take the disclosure-like benefits of a private placement and then add it to general solicitation and promise to the investor of a secondary market without registering to us. Senator Warren finished off her line of questioning, saying to Clayton, quote, I am understanding you to say that what ICOs do by not registering, is a violation of the law. The SEC chairman simply answered, correct. But he did moderate his views on the illegality of ICOs by stating, quote, I'm perfectly happy for these people to do private placements, but do them right. You know what, dude? You need to fuck off. Sorry. We're definitely not reading your statements or your PDF tonight, because I don't know that you have anything useful to contribute to the conversation at this point. You haven't, educated yourself on the realities behind these markets and these quote-unquote securities as you understand them. I categorize some ICOs, well, actually, if they don't have their own blockchain, if they don't have their own miners, if they're based on another cryptocurrency, I consider them a quote-unquote security, but you do not have any authority over them. Why? Because you do not have any authority over the underlying asset. If you don't have any authority over Ethereum, which you don't, then you don't have any authority over anything built on top of Ethereum. It's not like it's a security being issued on top of Federal Reserve notes or something directly related to Federal Reserve notes. Therefore, you do not control that shit. And to assume that you do have any kind of control over that, all you're going to do is put people in jail. Literally, that is all you are going to do, is put people in jail. And selectively at that. I'm sure if fucking Goldman Sachs cranks out an ICO, that you're not going to be up their ass with a fucking regulatory wand. But, some kid down the block from me sets up an ICO that's actually useful, and he's actually making good on the promises of the ICO. You want to bust down on him if he doesn't register with the SEC. Give me a fucking break. What fucking world do you think you live in, man? This shit all started in fucking garages, in closets. That's where Bitcoin started. You know, people are real quick to forget that shit. This all started as a hobby. This is all optional. We didn't have to do this, but we did it because you people have been fucking up in your job for as long as you have. So we took the need for you out of it. If there's a place for trust, sure, there you go, regulator, get in there. But there's not a place for trust in most of what we do. You know, I can see some need for maybe some regulatory oversight, whether or not you actually should be enabled to execute or do any kind of law-abiding shit, unless, of course, it's like they actually stole money. It would be things like exchanges, or, you know, maybe people that traded for other people. You know, because here's one, I don't understand why you fucking people can't get it right. I really don't. You know, you talk about the blockchain like it itself is all wonderful. Well, you know what? How do you get a fucking blockchain? You connect a bunch of people who are voluntarily doing it and are doing it with the promise of reward, i.e. the coin at the end of the fucking block. And that's why they're doing it. That's the reason they want the fucking coin. You know, we give it the value. Not you, not a god, not some fucking, you know, not the president. Nobody but us, including you, give it value. But our coin, and I explained this to a banker today, I'm like, these are the most transparent currencies ever invented by man. Even these fucking ICOs. There's never been anything like this as far as currencies go. And yet, they keep wanting to regulate the coins. Forget about regulating the coin. Regulate the fucking actual criminal activity that happens. Because, goddamn, there is enough of it out there for you to chase. And I mean, it's fully documentable. I mean, fuck, if you have a Reddit account, you can read all kinds of actual quote-unquote criminal activity going on out there. People ripping one another off and shit. And this is the thing that bugs me, okay? You're trying to, like, stop us from creating ICOs and shit, right? You're not trying to stop us from creating crime or actually performing crime, because if you were, you'd be like the FBI, and you'd be using the fucking blockchain for Bitcoin to chase transactions down and chase people down via the taint that's associated with their transactions. I mean, really. Why are you chasing it like this? I don't understand it. Unless you're doing it for some fucking banker, you're basically some lobbyist for a banker. Okay, let me put it to you this way. You're basically taking a noose off of the shelf and putting it around your neck and finding a nice chair and standing up on the chair and then tying the noose off to something and then kicking the chair out from under your own feet. Yeah. Because you're in this situation now where you have one or two masters. And they're all regulated by one master, the bank. Because they only get the money that the bank is willing to invest or loan. And then you only get the clippings off of what they give them. So, look, that's one master, right? Well, we're going back to a time when there are more than one master. Okay, those one masters are no longer the only sources of quote unquote monetary units. It's not monetary value that's important there, because we create that. It's monetary units, the capability to transact that monetary value from one person to another, and to use it to purchase things or services or whatever. But in the regulating of the currencies themselves or the ICOs, you need to forget about all that bullshit. Really, you do. You need to start looking at the Bitcoin and the Ethereum as tools. If you want to enforce the regulatory fucking jurisdictions that you cover, if you want to cover them properly, all of the laws that you currently have on the books, if you want to nail them down to the letter of the fucking law, I mean eliminate all ambiguity about time, place, resources purchased, all that shit, use Bitcoin and Ethereum to help you out in those investigations. Because I can guarantee you there are plenty of people out there committing actual crime, not things like buying stuff. I don't consider buying drugs or whatever a crime. I'm talking about like manipulation, like you're so worried about. Assuming that you're actually worried about quote unquote manipulation. There's all kinds of evidence out there for that. And you can track it all down. But here's the thing. I already know that if you do that, you are going to find your masters on the other end of some of that activity. And this is the reason why, I would surmise anyway, that you won't use these tools in that way, because you can't be selective. If you start using this as the standard, and it's accountable to everybody, and everybody can investigate just as easily as you can, there is no hiding anymore. There is no escape anymore. But you have to use these tools that you have available to you to execute your mandates, your existing mandates. You don't have to create more fucking mandates. You don't have to create more enforcement authority. You got all the fucking enforcement authority you fucking need. It's already been granted to you by Congress. Now, rather than trying to target cryptocurrencies as something to attack in and of themselves, again, use them to execute your mandate. If there are people that are fucking blatantly ripping people off, you'll be able to find it. You will be able to find it before anybody says anything about it. I mean, why do you think we're as responsive to the issues that we have in our markets as we are? It's because we check the shit. We can check the shit, so we do check the shit. I don't get it. Other than, of course, they give up the ability to be selective in who they prosecute. And it's one of the reasons I've always suspected for all of the exchange hacks, the reason why we don't see too many quote-unquote prosecutions involved with them, especially considering how accountable cryptocurrencies actually are, is because invariably these guys do use these tools. The FBI or the NSA or the CIA or whoever is the investigator, the CFTC, the SEC, the IRS, they study it. They review the transactions. They follow the transactions down, and invariably they find either banks, government agencies, or proxies working for the same. Invariably. And they shut the fuck up about who did what. I mean, hell, why aren't we talking about all the hacks that happened on Cryptsy? And there were hacks that happened on Cryptsy. It wasn't just a matter of misappropriation, although there was some of that too. There was plenty of hacking going on. Why aren't we hearing about those funds? Why aren't we hearing about you prosecuting people that tried to move those funds? Why? Because your mandate apparently really doesn't have anything to do with lawful prosecution. It's more about how should I say this? Competition control. Keeping certain people where they are. And, that's only really good if they could offer you the same value they did the day before. But I think you're going to find in cryptocurrencies that that's not really the case. We're seeing it in various ways. The reason why we still see ICOs and we still see cryptocurrencies being born, meaning new people starting them, is because they think that there is something to really address. An aspect that current cryptocurrencies and current ICO projects aren't successfully doing. Whether or not they're doing the same thing, it's questionable. But whether they're doing it successfully or successfully enough, it's because we have the option to just pick up the tools and do it all over again that we do it. If we can foresee a need, enough of a need to even bother. I mean, hell, look at Dogecoin. What need does Dogecoin fulfill? I don't know. But during this last bubble, it had a market cap of, I think it was either $2 or $4 billion. This is a fucking meme coin, people. And from what I understand, it's a capless meme coin. It doesn't have a limit on how many they can mine, but they do mine it. It's been around for about 4 years now, 4 or 5 years now. And like I said, it was valued at, I want to say it was $4 billion at the peak. So, what need does it fulfill? I don't know. Other than they've got a really, really nice community. But I see that and I think to myself, people are looking for anywhere to put their monetary value, and they would rather put it into a meme coin than keep it in the US dollar, even for a short period of time. So, I mean, really, SEC, CFTC, IRS, you really got to be questioning that. Because people are saying this about the coin that you get paid in. Okay, you all get paid in Federal Reserve notes. The rest of the world says, I'm willing to put my money into fucking Dogecoin because I think it will retain monetary value longer than your US dollars will, or Federal Reserve notes. I mean, really, dude, take that one to heart. That people are willing to throw money wildly speculating on ICOs than keeping that money in a savings account. If you reflect on that long enough, you'll find that you do have failures on your ledger. And these are simply responses to that. So rather than getting all pissed off at us for reacting perfectly rationally and logical about the situation, you need to start pointing the finger back at yourself, taking a look at the mirror and saying, where have I failed the public of this planet so badly that they would flee the conventional markets that I regulate because they feel more secure giving their money to complete strangers, pitching complete and utterly audacious claims of profit. Why would they be so desperate? What have I done wrong to make people that desperate? Something to think about. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw back down into some music. And, I think this one goes out to the SEC. How will I laugh tomorrow if I can't even smile today? And that's Suicidal Tendencies here on Coin Metal. And that was Faith No More with Falling to Pieces. Hey. Yeah, I can imagine that some probably feel their livelihoods are falling to pieces because of crypto. Anyway, I dug around a little bit and I actually found another article I wanted to talk about. Not this one. I got rid of that one. Yeah. Sorry, I saw that article again that I started reading by about the SEC and CFTC, and it was bad. Yuck. Anyway, as threatened, we are going to read Mr. Christopher Giancarlo's testimony to the Senate Banking Committee in Washington, D.C. yesterday, the 6th of 2018, February. And so here we go. Introduction. Virtual currency. Thank you, Mr. Chairman Crapo, for the invitation to testify before the committee. Thank you, Ranking Member Brown, and all the members of the committee for this opportunity to discuss virtual currencies. At the outset, I would like to note that this hearing is timely, even fortuitous. Emerging financial technologies broadly are taking us into a new chapter of economic history. They are impacting trading, markets, and the entire financial landscape with far-ranging implications for capital formation and risk transfer. They include machine learning and artificial intelligence, algorithm-based trading, data and analytics, quote, smart contracts, valuing themselves and calculating payments in real time, and distributed ledger technologies, which over time may come to challenge traditional market infrastructure. They are transforming the world around us, and it is no surprise that these technologies are having an equally transformative impact on U.S. capital and derivatives markets. The more specific topic for today's hearing, however, is virtual currency. Broadly speaking, virtual currencies are a digital representation of value that may function as a medium of exchange, a unit of account, and/or a store of value. Virtual currencies generally run on a decentralized peer-to-peer network of computers, which rely on certain network participants to validate and log transactions on a permanent public distributed ledger, commonly known as the blockchain. Supporters of virtual currencies see a technological solution to the age-old, quote, double spend problem that has always driven the need for a trusted central authority to ensure that an entity is capable of and does engage in a valid transaction. Traditionally, there has been a need for a trusted intermediary, for example, a bank or other financial institution, to serve as a gatekeeper for transactions and many economic activities. Virtual currencies seek to replace the need for a central authority or intermediary with a decentralized, rules-based, and open consensus mechanism. An array of thoughtful business, technology, academic, and policy leaders extrapolated some of the possible impacts that derive from such an innovation, including how market participants conduct transactions, transfer ownership, and power peer-to-peer applications and economic systems. Others, however, argue that this is all hype or technological alchemy, and that the current interest in virtual currencies is overblown and resembles wishful thinking, a fever, even a mania. They have declared the 2017 heightened valuation of Bitcoin to be a bubble similar to the famous, quote, tulip bubble of the 17th century. They say that virtual currencies perform no socially useful function and, worse, can be used to evade laws or support illicit activity. Indeed, history has demonstrated to us time and time again that bad actors will try to invoke the concept of innovation in order to perpetuate age-old fraudulent schemes on the public. Accordingly, some assert that virtual currencies should be banned, as some nations have done, although not terribly effectively. There is clearly no shortage of opinions on virtual currencies such as Bitcoin. In fact, virtual currencies may be all things to all people. For some, potential riches, the next big thing, a technological revolution, an inexorable value proposition. For others, a fraud, a new form of temptation and allure, and a way to separate the unsuspecting from their money. Perspective is critically important. As of the morning of February 5th, the total value of all outstanding Bitcoin was about $130 billion based on a Bitcoin price of $7,700. The Bitcoin market capitalization is less than the stock market capitalization of a single, quote, large cap business such as McDonald's, around $130 billion. The total value of all outstanding virtual currencies is about $365 billion. Because virtual currencies like Bitcoin are sometimes considered to be comparable to gold as an investment vehicle, it is important to recognize the total value of all the gold in the world is estimated by the World Gold Council to be about $8 trillion, which continues to dwarf the virtual currency market size. Clearly, the column inches of press attention to virtual currency far surpass its size and magnitude in today's global economy. Yet, despite being a relatively small asset class, virtual currency presents novel challenges for regulators. SEC Chairman Clayton and I recently wrote, the CFTC and SEC, along with other federal and state regulators and criminal authorities, will continue to work together to bring transparency and integrity to these markets, and importantly, to deter and prosecute fraud and abuse. These markets are new, evolving, and international. As such, they require us to be nimble and forward-looking, coordinated with our state, federal, and international colleagues, and engaged with important stakeholders, including Congress. It is this perspective that has guided our work at the CFTC on virtual currencies. Introduction. The mission of the CFTC. The mission of the CFTC is to foster open, transparent, competitive, and financially sound derivative markets. By working to avoid systemic risk, the Commission aims to protect market users and their funds, consumers, and the public from fraud, manipulation, and abusive practices related to derivatives and other products that are subject to the Commodity Exchange Act, CEA. The CFTC was established as an independent agency in 1974, assuming responsibilities that had previously belonged to the Department of Agriculture in the 1920s. The Commission has historically been charged by the CEA with regulatory authority over commodity futures markets. These markets have existed since the 1860s, beginning with agricultural commodities such as wheat, corn, and cotton. Over time, these organized commodity futures markets, known as designated contract markets, DCMs, regulated by the CFTC, have grown to include those for energy and metals commodities, collectively including crude oil, heating oil, gasoline, copper, gold, and silver. The agency now also oversees these commodities futures markets for financial products such as interest rates, stock indexes, and foreign currency. The definition of commodity in the CEA is broad. It can mean a physical commodity, such as an agricultural product, ergo cotton or wheat, or natural resource, ergo gold and oil. It can mean a currency or interest rate. The CEA of definition of commodity also includes, quote, all services, rights, and interests in which contracts for future delivery are presently or in the future dealt in. In the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, President Obama and Congress enhanced the CFTC's regulatory authority with the passage of the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, Dodd-Frank Act. The agency now also oversees much of the U.S. swaps market in addition to exchange-traded futures markets. Futures, swaps, and other derivatives markets are essential means for commercial and financial risk mitigation and transfer. These markets allow the risks of variable production costs, such as the price of raw materials, energy, foreign currency, and interest rates, to be transferred from those who cannot afford them to those who can. They are the reason why American consumers enjoy stable prices in the grocery store, whatever the conditions out on the farm. But derivatives markets are not just useful for agricultural producers. They impact the price and availability of heating in American homes, the energy used in factories, the interest rates borrowers pay on home mortgages, and the returns workers earn on their retirement savings. More than 90% of Fortune 500 companies use derivatives to manage commercial or market risk in their worldwide business operations. In short, derivatives serve the needs of society to help moderate price, supply, and other commercial risks to free up capital for economic growth, job creation, and prosperity. To ensure the integrity of the U.S. derivative markets, the CFTC regulates derivative market participants and activities. The agency oversees a variety of individuals and organizations. These include swap execution facilities, derivatives clearing organizations, designated contract markets, swap data repositories, swap dealers, futures commission merchants, commodity pool operators, and other entities. The CFTC also prosecutes derivative market fraud and manipulation, including misconduct in underlying spot markets for commodities. Number 1. CFTC authority and oversight over virtual currencies. In 2015, the CFTC determined that virtual currencies such as Bitcoin met the definition of a, quote, commodity under the CEA. Nevertheless, the CFTC does not have regulatory jurisdiction under the CEA over markets or platforms conducting cash or, quote, spot transactions in virtual currencies or other commodities over participants on such platforms. More specifically, the CFTC does not have authority to conduct regulatory oversight over spot virtual currency platforms or other cash commodities, including imposing registration requirements, surveillance and monitoring, transaction reporting, compliance with personal conduct standards, customer education, capital adequacy, trading system safeguards, cybersecurity examinations, or other requirements. In fact, current law does not provide any U.S. federal regulator with such regulatory oversight authority over spot virtual currency platforms operating in the United States or abroad. However, the CFTC does have enforcement jurisdiction to investigate through subpoena and other investigative powers and, as appropriate, conduct civil enforcement action against fraud and manipulation in virtual currency derivatives markets and in underlying virtual currency spot markets. Ooh, I just remembered something. Let me see if I can find this really quick. It was kind of an article that I wanted to preface this discussion with, and this kind of touched on it. And where the hell did I put it? I know it was on my Twitter feed somewhere. But yeah, it was back to our point of selective prosecution with regard to this stuff, cryptocurrencies and all. And where the hell did I put it? Where is it? Oh, it was about Goldman Sachs of all people. Oh, here it is. we're going to touch on this article really quick because I think it's pertinent at this point, really. Never allow. And I want to check and verify, make sure we're actually on the spot where we want to be. And right there. All right, and we were just talking about spot markets, right? Here we go. This one is on applancer.co. Goldman Sachs Bitcoin trading desk. An accident or plan? And I don't know that I want to finish this off right yet because it is a pretty quick article, but yeah, I want to go back to that because we were talking earlier about how these organizations see their authority over cryptocurrencies or in this space. Yeah. Continuing on. In contrast to the spot markets, the CFTC does have both regulatory and enforcement jurisdiction under the CEA over derivatives on virtual currencies traded in the United States. This means that for derivatives on virtual currencies traded in U.S. markets, the CFTC conducts comprehensive regulatory oversight, including imposing registration requirements and compliance with a full range of requirements for trade practice and market surveillance reporting and monitoring and standards for conduct, capital requirements, and platform and system safeguards. Number 2, assertion of CFTC authority. The CFTC has been straightforward in asserting its area of statutory jurisdiction concerning virtual currencies derivatives. As early as 2014, former CFTC Chairman Timothy Masad discussed virtual currencies and potential CFTC oversight under the Commodity Exchange Act. And as noted above, in 2015, the CFTC found virtual currencies to be a commodity. In that year, the agency took enforcement action to prohibit wash trading and prearranged trades on a virtual currencies derivatives platform. In 2016, the CFTC took action against a Bitcoin futures exchange operating in the U.S. that failed to register with the agency. Last year, the CFTC issued proposed guidance on what is a derivative market and what is a spot market in the virtual currency context. The agency also issued warnings about valuations and volatility in spot virtual currency markets and launched an unprecedented consumer education effort detailed in Section 4 herein. Enforcement. The CFTC Division of Enforcement is a premier federal civil enforcement agency dedicated to deterring and preventing price manipulation and other disruptions of market integrity, ensuring the financial integrity of all transactions subject to the CEA, and protecting market participants from fraudulent or other abusive practices and misuse of customer assets. Appendix A herein summarizes recent CFTC enforcement activities. The CFTC has been particularly assertive of its enforcement jurisdiction over virtual currencies. It has formed an internal virtual currency enforcement task force to garner and deploy relevant expertise in this evolving asset class. The task force shares information and works cooperatively with counterparts at the SEC with similar virtual currency expertise. In summer of 2017, the CFTC took enforcement action against a virtual currency Ponzi scheme. Over the past few weeks, the CFTC filed a series of civil enforcement actions against perpetrators of fraud, market manipulation, and disruptive trading involving virtual currency. These include: number 1, My Big Paycoin Inc., which charged the defendants with commodity fraud and misappropriation related to the ongoing solicitation of customers for a virtual currency known as MyBigCoin. Number 2, the Entrepreneurs Headquarters Limited, which charged the defendants with a fraudulent scheme to solicit Bitcoin from members of the public, misrepresenting that customers' funds would be pooled and invested in products, including binary options, and instead misappropriated the funds and failed to register as a commodity pool operator. And number 3, CoinDrop Markets, which charged the defendants with fraud and misappropriation in connection with purchases and trading of Bitcoin and Litecoin. These recent enforcement actions confirm that the CFTC, working closely with the SEC and other fellow financial enforcement agencies, will aggressively prosecute bad actors that engage in fraud and manipulation regarding virtual currencies. B. Bitcoin futures. It is important to put the new Bitcoin futures market in perspective. It is quite small, with open interest at the CME of 6,695 Bitcoin and the CBOE futures exchange of 6,695 Bitcoin as of February 2nd, 2018. At a price of approximately $7,700 per Bitcoin, this represents a notional amount of about $94 million. In comparison, the notional amount of the open interest in the CME's WTI crude oil futures is more than 1,000 times greater, about $170 billion, 2,600,000 contracts as of February 2nd, 2018, and the notional amount represented by the open interest of COMEX gold futures was about $74 billion, about 549,000 contracts. Prior to the launch of Bitcoin futures, the CFTC closely observed the evolution of virtual currencies over the past several years. One exchange, CME Group, launched a Bitcoin reference rate in November of 2016, and another exchange, CBOE Futures Exchange, first approached the CFTC in July of 2017. The CFTC anticipated receiving proposals for the launch of Bitcoin future products in late 2017. Under CEA and Commission regulations and related guidance, futures exchanges may self-certify new products on 24-hour notice prior to trading. In the past decade and a half, more than 12,000 new futures products have been self-certified. It is clear that Congress and prior commissions deliberately designed the product self-certification framework to give futures exchanges in their role as self-regulatory organizations the ability to quickly bring new products to the marketplace. The CFTC's current product self-certification framework has long been considered to function well and to be consistent with public policy that encourages market-driven innovation that has made America's listed futures markets the envy of the world. Practically, both CME and CBOE had numerous discussions and exchanged numerous draft product terms and conditions with the CFTC staff over a course of months prior to their certifying and launching Bitcoin futures in December of 2017. This type of lengthy engagement is not unusual during the self-certification process for products that may raise certain issues. The CFTC staff undertook its review of the CME and CBOE's Bitcoin futures product with considered attention. Given the emerging nature and heightened attention of these products, staff conducted a, quote, heightened review of CME's and CBOE's responsibility under the CEA and Commission regulations to ensure that their Bitcoin futures products and their cash settlement processes were not readily susceptible to manipulation, and the risk management of the associated derivatives clearing organizations, DCOs, to ensure that the products were sufficiently margined. Staff obtained the voluntary cooperation of CME and CBOE with a set of enhanced monitoring and risk management steps. Number 1. Designated contract markets, DCMs, setting exchange large trader reporting thresholds in 5 Bitcoins or less. Number 2. DCMs entering direct or indirect information sharing agreements with spot market platforms to allow access to trade and trader data making up the underlying index that the futures contract settled to. Number 3. DCMs agreeing to engage in monitoring of underlying index data from cash markets and identifying anomalies and disproportionate moves. Number 4. DCMs agreeing to conduct inquiries as appropriate, including at the trade settlement and trader level when anomalies or disproportionate moves are identified. Number 5. DCMs agreeing to regular communication with CFTC surveillance staff on trade activities, including providing trade settlement and trade data upon request. Scrolling down here. 6. DCMs agreeing to coordinate product launches to enable the CFTC's market surveillance branch to monitor developments. And number 7. DCOs setting substantially high initial and maintenance margin for cash-settled instruments. The first 6 of these elements were used to ensure that the new product offerings complied with the DCM's obligation under the CEA core principles and CFTC regulations and related guidance. The 7th element, setting high initial and maintenance margins,